we go. All right.
So Nate, you'll just need to go down to screen sharing and allow people to share.
Okay, you should be good to go.
Thank you. Let's rearrange things a little bit here. There we go. Just so I can see some of you. All right. So Nate, you've seen a version of this. It has continued to evolve. We continue to add more into it. But basically, this is one of the big pieces of work that Town Properties has been doing and trying to get an understanding of everything we need to do. Please don't get too depressed by it, where this is just something that we need to work through over time here. And we pretty much have all the buildings listed, and we are compiling as we go a list of everything that we need to have on here. Some of the things are going to be a few years out. Some things are more current and pressing, but we're still trying to make sure we capture everything on the sheet so that we can do some good planning going forward. So what I thought we could do is we'll just kind of run through the whole thing here so that FinCom has an understanding of sort of everything that's out there. And then we can focus in at the end on specifically on warrant articles that we're looking at for this year. But please, as we go through, if you have questions, let's just let me know. I'm happy to talk more to items. I'm not going to go into too much detail unless we want to, because otherwise we'd be here all night. And I'm sure we have other things to do. But so without further ado here, let's just dig into the Dennett Elementary School. One of the things, of course, we're tracking is the roof, which we have here, which is, and what we're also trying to do with the spreadsheet is keep track of what the sourcing is. And, for most things, what we don't want to see is just Town Properties Committee, because we're just ballparking something at that point. But we're looking to get good estimates on things and then be able to update those periodically, or at least have an estimate off of a real estimate, based on changes in construction costs. So for the school roof, this is a full replacement of the roof. This was a study done back in 2018. That number certainly wouldn't be 1.1 million at this point. It would be something much greater than that today. That said, we are in the process at Dennett of looking at a refurbishment, which is something that we might be able to do with some other technology. And we're waiting to hear on that as far as an estimate in the near future. The goal of that is hopefully that it will be less expensive to do a refurbishment, and actually maybe less expensive to do it that way, even without state funds, given the difficulty we have in trying to get state funds to help out with something like this. So more to come there, but that's not anything we're talking about this year. We have siding listed here. I think I may have mentioned it in the past to the FinCom, and certainly it's something that we did do some work last year with transferring some money at special town meeting to address the most immediate problem, which is why when you go up to the Dennett, you notice there's a big blue wall now. That was the worst wall, and that's been addressed, but over time we will need to replace the siding on the building. We haven't dug into what that's going to be or how far out that is. You may remember hearing about a little over a year ago, we had a failure of one of the 6 big HVAC units on the roof of the Dennett. We were still in the time of CARES Act funds, and we were able to utilize CARES Act funds to replace one of those. We have 5 additional units up there of similar age and probably of somewhat similar circumstance. So it is something that's on the radar screen about needing to replace. The other challenge we have here is that given the issues with COVID and supply chain, it actually takes about 6 months to get a unit. So being able to do what we did last time, at least in the near term, whereby the unit died, we got a new one, we had it up there in a week, is not possible. It's about a 6-month backlog. So this is probably a space where we're going to consider utilizing some ARPA funds to at least move this project forward. And then we'll have to see, based on what the county is doing from an ARPA perspective, This, we may end up doing more than what we originally thought, but we got to see how that all works out with what the county's doing with the funds that are sort of quote unquote allocated to Plympton. But this is something that we hope to take advantage of and do at least a couple of units in the next year. But again, that would be ARPA funds, so no warrant articles for that. There is a need to hook up some of the new kitchen equipment to emergency power. I don't believe this is nothing that we're looking at from a warrant article perspective. And then the next three, we did find out at the school committee meeting last week that we will have some surpluses, both in special ed and the vocational lines. So our goal here again is to be able to take care of these capital items within the existing school funds. So starting from the bottom going up, we have four classrooms where the floors are completely failing. The tiles are coming up off the floor and in some instances breaking. We had one classroom that was so bad we had to do it over Christmas vacation. So that's already done. So we're already in about 10,000 for that. Since we have the funds, we may go ahead and move and do some over April vacation. So to reduce the crunch at the end of the year to spend anything that's allocated at special town meeting. There's also a need to replace the intercom system up there and tie it into Silver Lake overall. And then we're also looking at upgrading to more of a key fob or badge access control instead of keys at the Dennett. And I don't have a price on that yet. But those are all items we would consider putting a special town meeting articles on in order to transfer funds and not look for any additional funds from the town to fund these. Any questions with the Dennett? Okay. On to the fire station. We have three items here. One is the feasibility study that we had talked about last year, but passed over to do some additional work. This is back this year. We have validated that 300,000 would be about the right amount to do. If you recall, last year the warrant article was for 3.25, but we were going to take it down to about 290. And that is, so I think 300,000 should allow us to do that. A couple of things that the feasibility study will get us. One, it's going to get us an actual estimate for building a new fire station. The number below this is just a complete ballpark based on estimated square footages and estimated costs, and it varies quite a bit. And isn't a very accurate number, and therefore doesn't allow us to plan about when we may need to do a station or what that costs may be. So one of the big things that the feasibility study would do is actually peg a price tag to that so that we can look at our funding and be able to see how we can afford that within our budget. The other thing it would do is it would also define the size of the fire station, be able to make sure that we're not building something that's too big, but also that we would build something that would last. And it would also validate the site and any costs that might be associated with that, among any number of other things. But that's the basic concept there. And then as part of the roof studies that we did of the library and the fire station, we also looked at the existing fire building. And this was the lowest cost of any of our roofs that have issues. And so that is sitting here as a placeholder of something that we will need to get to at some point. Fire station questions. Okay. Highway building, we have one cleanup item from all of the roof work that was done this past year. And this is to add some additional brackets to the building to increase structural stability. So that is listed here. This is, I believe, something that we're looking to put on the special town meeting in order to get funded and executed and take that project, close that project out completely. There is some damage to the siding on the highway building, similar to the reasons why there was damage to the roof. So we will need to replace the siding at some point. This is a placeholder for that. We do not have any estimates at this point, and it's not something that's in dire need of being done, but we need to have it on here for planning purposes. On to the library. We have, again, I mentioned roof studies. We did a roof study of the library. This would be the cost for a full replacement of the library roof. It is in need of doing that sooner rather than later. We don't believe it's leaking at the moment, but Mike Slauson was going to actually replace the stained tiles from when it's leaked in the past to make sure that we don't have any new leaks, because if it's still leaking in the same spot, we wouldn't know. But that's on here again for tracking purposes, and we can come back to the roof situation and some things that we might want to think about down the road on that. Lighting, if you've been up in the reading room in the old part of the library, you'll notice it's a little dim, and you need your light on your phone to be able to look at the print of most of the books there. The lights that were there, we tried to fix those. The original way they were set up had a bulb in there of some weird design that when they attempted to upgrade them with green lighting, with first fluorescent and then an LED, the type of bulb that actually went in there was not the right one, and the bulbs ended up blowing themselves apart, basically. So those lights didn't function properly. They did do an upgrade to them, and it did not work in providing the appropriate light. So we need to do something about that. We're looking at two options there. One is to put in track lighting, but we're also now exploring, which may come in at a lower cost, of putting in some recessed lights. So we'll see where that goes as far as that. Mike is working on getting additional cost estimates there, but we figured that this is definitely something we should be looking at doing for the library this year. Two other items for the library. One is it probably would be good for the building to have some hot water. There is currently no hot water in the building at this time, and there is actually no piping for hot water to be put in. We've gone back and forth. There seems to have been some, the belief is there was hot water in the building at some point, but some additional work was done. At some point, the hot water was shut off or taken out, and then the access to where those pipes were is gone too. But that doesn't explain why you turn on both taps and water comes out of both. So I'm still really skeptical that there ever was hot water in the building. Regardless of that, there is none now. So we put a placeholder in here to start rectifying that with probably a localized solution where you have the mini hot water heaters sitting underneath the sink. That actually does a couple things. You could put it on a timer as well, so that it's only really going to be sitting there generating hot water during the times that the library is open, which is not a huge amount. So that shouldn't add too much to the utility costs, but I do think they probably should have hot water. So that's fine. And then the last one is the children's room carpet. I believe it's original to the renovation of the building. It is in dire need of being replaced, especially since they often sit on that carpet and they're doing, reading time and things like that. We did actually have it tested to make sure there wasn't any asbestos in the glue, and lo and behold, we can actually test something. It's been proven now. We can test something that the town owns. It doesn't actually have asbestos in it. So that's a definite win. We also were able to do the large meeting room at the old townhouse. Those tiles also don't have asbestos in it. So that's probably all the good news I have for the rest of the evening, because everything else is covered in asbestos. But there we are. So those three items. So what we'd likely do is put together a warrant article for library upgrades. And if we think about that back, the last time we spent money on the library was CPC funds to do the drainage system around there. So the library is in need of a little love, and that's what we're hoping to do this year. A couple of other items that we're tracking. One is the HVAC system. We're trying to get price to do an assessment of it, so we understand how old it is and what it might cost if we have to replace it. The goal is not to do that, but we want to understand that. And then there is no actual water filtration in the library. So as you can imagine, the toilets and sinks look a bit of a mess. So that's probably something we should think about at some point down the road. Not anything we're worrying about tonight. And again, stop me if you want to talk about any of these. Old Townhouse, we had a pretty significant mold issue The little room off the back of the main building was very problematic. It looks like water had been leaking in there, perhaps from along where the flashing is along the roof. It was all blown in insulation in there, and it got wet and never dried out again, thus creating lots and lots of mold. We had to remediate that. We had ServPro in there. They took everything out of the room, took out all the ceiling, the walls, and all the insulation, got rid of all of that, cleaned everything downstairs, did a little bit of cleaning upstairs too, but most of it was, it's interesting, it's kind of, it got better as you got further away from the room. So that's been remediated. They could not do the floor because they were concerned about asbestos. We had it tested, of course it was asbestos, so we've had that remediated as well. The floor is all taken up now. So that is now all clean. It's still leaking, but there's nothing to really leak on and create any mold. It's pretty open to the air now. So that's been done there. So we decided from a town properties perspective, we're going to do this in 2 stages. The first stage is to get the exterior sorted along with a few other repairs to the building. And that's what you see here at about $700-800, is to redo that roof, make sure that everything is sorted, that it's all watertight. When we've gotten to that, we'll then turn around and probably look for next year to do something to put the room back together, redo the electrical, put in insulation, so on and so forth. But we figured it better to do it just in a couple of stages. We're not missing the use of that room particularly. And then we also think that once we do that work, there will be some need to do some paint touch up, but we're going to cover that under maintenance for that piece of it. We did do the testing in the large meeting room. There won't be any abatement, so that will be 0, which is great. And then we just have the issue of putting new tiles or something in that room for flooring. Don't have an estimate on that, and I'm not sure we will for town meeting, but this may be something that we can sort out under our town ARPA funds if we decide to do that. Nothing listed for the police station, though we still have some issues with humidity in the summer, so we'll be looking into that as the weather gets warmer again and make sure that we can get some adjustments there. But no other items are on our list at this point. Silver Lake, 2 items here. One, the tennis courts. We did approve a warrant article last year for $41,000. This is, I believe, going to come back for, we approved it and the other 2 towns didn't, so I think it's coming back around. It's likely that the price may have adjusted over the last year. I put a placeholder in here for around 5,000, which is a little more than 10% adjustment. If we need an article, it would be to just simply add to the prior article to meet that expenditure. And then the other one on here is HVAC for the middle and high schools. Our percentage of that this is for the classrooms of the 2 buildings. 190,000 is the rough estimate for our percentage of that. This would be county ARPA funds that we would look to leverage for this. This would not be something coming out of our budget. Townhouse. So at this point, we are in the process of going out to bid to do a full replacement of the 2nd and 3rd roof sections. Again, think about the building starting in front as the old building being 1, the middle building being 2, and the back building being 3. This would get 2 and 3 sorted. We put 200,000 aside for that at last town meeting, which we have been using some of that to get all of the design work and RFP work done. We will be going out to bid with bids due strategically so that we would be able to insert a number in for town meeting to be able to complete the projects. So I have a placeholder in here. The original estimate was for 450. I bumped that up by 50 to 300,000. That's a placeholder, but it will all depend on what happens with the bids. So that's going to be a bit of a wait and see. So we went with roofs 2 and 3 to start because we had to start somewhere. The roof section 1 is not good either. It needs to be replaced. We actually had some leaking there, actually when they were doing some of the testing work for roofs 2 and 3, and they helped us out and patched a hole there. So that's something that will be coming along. But as I said, well, we've got that just tucked off to the side. We got to get this other part done first. And that's part of sort of our overall roof discussion, which we can have in a couple of minutes. The next one here is, if you recall, we may have talked about it when we talked about the ramp. One of the things we also had as an alternate on that project was to make some changes to the main entrance of the building and remove those yellow trip steps that everyone has trouble with. And so we're looking to create sort of an overall project to do that and deal with some ADA door requirements and lighting for the ramp. This would be something we'd look to do as an ARPA project. And we already have a design for that. We weren't able to do the main entrance redesign as part of the ramp project because the bids came in way over the estimates and we did not have the money. So that is that. As I think everyone knows, we've had a few problems with the waste pipes in the building. We are exploring technology that you can do resurfacing rather than digging everything up. And so we're in the process of trying to, we had one of the contractor was in today to look at that and working on reaching out to a couple of others to get some different estimates and figure out what that's going to be. This also seems like one that we may consider from an ARPA perspective, but given that they're old cast iron pipes that are very rough on the inside and thus don't make it particularly easy, it makes it very easy for things to get caught and therefore then clog. And so it's something that we'll need to do. And actually one of the things I don't actually have on this, which I have to add is, speaking of asbestos, most of the tiles in the townhouse are asbestos, and some of them are starting to come up. And so we're going to have some abatement work to do there. But one of the challenges there is if we have to dig anything up in order to even do the lining, then we have to deal with the abatement where they might need to dig it up if there's tiles down there. So there's a sort of, we're trying to figure out all the different pieces on the board right now on that. And then this air conditioning one is just a placeholder and reminder that we're going to take a look at the various window units that they use at the townhouse and make sure that we have appropriate ones for the windows, particularly the ones by the ramp, because the ramp is closer to the windows, and we may need to have some floor units instead. And so this is not anything that we're looking for additional funds on. And then down here, we had originally talked about doing some planning for a campus septic system or for additional septic system up on the campus, specifically given how narrow the original readout for the ARPA funds was, given that that's been broadened some, at least for the monies that the town has received directly. That's just something that we'll keep here as a placeholder, but likely would be more included in any future project that if we decide to move ahead with the fire station. And then on here, we have we talked about this last year, and additional things have come up about a general purpose storage building. You know, we have a number of departments that could use some under coverage storage. We also have the town hearse that's sitting down in the Center Street. I was going to say garage, but that's probably being unkind to garages. But sitting down in Center Street, which isn't helping it, and so on. So this is just here as a placeholder. There's no immediate plans on that. Any questions or comments on all of that? Or it all makes complete sense, which if it does, that's a little scary. So just one thought on that I've been toying with a little bit, and we'll work with our finance team and the FinCom about thinking about this, is that we have a number of roof projects out there, and you know, it's one of those areas that's really something we should be fixing sooner rather than later, because if it lets water in, that creates more problems, and then we end up with additional costs and issues going down the road. So it may be, and we got to see what happens with this, with the estimate for the school and all that. This may be one of those things that we might want to consider pulling together into one project and bonding that out. It also may be something, and we've got to talk with our architect, see what his thoughts are too on that. You know, some of these projects, the bigger the project, the easier it is to get people to bid on them, and thus the more competition you have. So it may be advantageous to put it out as one big thing and see, or bucket it into two. Maybe it makes sense. The school is one and everything else is the other. So just something to have out there to think about. No decisions on this that all have been made. It's just it's what's kind of going around in our head and trying to figure out how we corral some of this, because at some point we want this list to start to get smaller. It seems like it keeps getting bigger, but I have a feeling we're going to still go through that a little bit more. My guess is that, you know, what we have listed here for the townhouse is in no way complete, and we are working on trying to get a list from the folks that are utilizing the townhouse on a daily basis to be able to say, hey, this is going on and that's going on, so that we can get it on the list and then figure out, is this just a maintenance item that we need to deal with? Is it something that needs a bigger project? How do we address it? So, all right, there we are.
John?
So, yep.
John, this is Art. I have a question. Is the fire station roof leaking?
It's not leaking per se, but it needs work in order to be done properly so we don't have problems. So there's significant issues with the venting. You know, there's a whole bunch of, there's things that have been done to that building that are not appropriate and not the way that it should be done. Thus, it will cause problems down the road if we do not address it, and we will shorten the life of the roof.
Yeah, no, I understand. I know the townhouse roof has been leaking since Nancy Butler was town clerk, so I do think it's time that we get on with that.
Well, that's the current project. So that roofs 2 and 3 are currently going out to bid in a couple of weeks, and the bids will be in. And the bids will be in before we have to send out the warrant, so that we can get that final number, which we will have an agreed upon bid to it, to get to town meeting and be able to execute and hopefully have work going in the summer.
Okay, good.
So we definitely have a priority list, and the work to do work on the fire station roof is not higher priority than any of the townhouse roofs at this point.
Okay, thank you.
John, do you have a total for next year? I saw there were no totals at the bottom.
So for I guess warrant articles that we would say for fiscal year 23, which really includes tennis courts, the old townhouse, and the library, is about 26,400. And then assuming that the townhouse roofs come in for an extra 300, then this is a combined number. We were just saying, well, perhaps we have that MMDT stabilization. Perhaps you want to take some of that out. It's roughly 600,000 looking out of either capital and MMDT for the feasibility study, as well as the roof.
What was that number again, John?
600.
600, okay.
300 and 300.
Okay.
The feasibility study, we're comfortable on that. The other one is a swag, and you know, the ramp, they had estimated at 75, it came in at 114. So, and that estimate was done 2 months before we went out to bid. So it will all depend on what they bid and how hungry people are for the work. hopefully it will be 300 or less. Less would be great.
If I could ask just one more question. I don't remember, in highway, does that include the road work that we do each year? Is that figured in here or not?
We don't have any highway road work in this.
That's done via a separate warrant article.
And that's typically what, 200, 250 a year, depending on.
It's 200 for this upcoming year that they're putting in for.
Now, not to blow your meeting for in 2 weeks, but just as you think about this, our hope is based on the current budgeted Chapter 70, which of course, until it's in law, we don't necessarily know, but our hope is that we will be delivering a Dennett budget about with essentially no net increase. I'll let that settle for a minute. And then Silver Lake, I believe, will be decreased because of enrollment changes. Now, that's not going to happen every year, but this year, that it shouldn't be, as I see it right now, it shouldn't be the schools that are going to put any pressure on the budget, because normally you're at a 2 to 3% increase for both.
Right. Yeah, that will be nice. Definitely. Thank you. Any other questions for John before we let him do whatever it is he's going to do?
Play with the spreadsheet some more.
Okay. Well, on behalf of FinCom, thank you to you and your committee for all the work that you do and gathering all this information and bringing it to us. It certainly makes our job easier, perhaps a little scarier, but definitely easier. So thank you for that.
Well, and we're also trying to be thoughtful as far as how we're using the different levers that we can here, so that it's not all coming from one place. And we'll continue to think through, how best to utilize ARPA, particularly given there's some differences between the county and our own money. And we'll be pretty strategic there in an effort to get some things taken off this list, but also to make sure we're getting as much as we can out of the county.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, John. I appreciate you joining us this evening.
Very welcome. You know where to find me if there's questions come up.
Sounds good. Thanks. Okay. Moving right along. Getting to our usual. We'll talk about the.
Sorry, Nate. One thing I wanted to mention, just
Sure.
so it's a surprise. If you recall, last year we did an article for 15,000 for consultant funds, and that's been used this year. And I'm not sure where we'll get a number as to where we think we're going to end up. But like all of the asbestos consults and things like that have all, and probably like the HVAC work done on the library to do an estimate there of do a sort of assessment, will all come out of those funds with the goal of being able to deliver numbers to town meeting and to FinCom that are real. So we will be looking to replenish that, not at 15,000 because we're not going to spend the 15, but to bring it back to the 15. So that will be a warrant article as well. I just realized that looking at Liz's list, that's not something we have on here because it's not a to-do. So,
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you.
Nope. Great. Thank you. So since John mentioned the list, why don't we move right into that, and let's see if I can share that list here. Not sure where it is. For some reason, it's not showing up for me.
Do you want me to try?
Yeah, if you can, it's not showing up on my screen to be shareable.
All right, 1 second.
You should have permission to do that.
Let me get it opened up on mine.
Thank you.
Is that coming up okay?
Yes, seems to be, yes. Thank you.
Okay. So this spreadsheet has 3 tabs at the bottom. It was updated as recently as this morning after John and I met. So I think starting with the ATM tab, because that seems to be where there's more items, just to run through some of these. We have a proposed article on here for alarm system installs. The $9,500 would cover installation in the first year of payments for fire and burglar alarm at the highway department, fire alarm at the library, and we're working on getting pricing if we wanted to do any kind of fire alarm at the old townhouse. We're looking into the pricing for that. It's possible we could get that somewhat rolled in. We are pursuing getting a phone line and Wi-Fi for the old townhouse so that some of our Wi-Fi thermostats, if we wanted to upgrade the door locks at that building, things like that, so that those items are functional. So this is possible that the alarm company can kind of work with us on that and possibly roll in the cost, at least for the install, into that. So that $9,500 might change a bit, but as of today, that's our best guesstimate for that. There are some little incentives and things like that too on our insurance if we have those buildings being monitored. I'm going to say like what John said, basically stop me if you want more details on something. This next one is the existing lease payments. I believe it's 2 fire department vehicles, a highway department vehicle, and also the fiber optic. So that's that article that you customarily see. Typically, town council has us format it almost into a little chart, and it calls out the individual payments in the chart, but that's the total amount. Taser replacement, this was an article put forth from the police department. Apparently their tasers need to be kept up to date with the latest technology, so this would be part of that replacement program. We have received the standard CPC article. We have also received an article request from Silver Lake for tennis courts. We did fund this last year, so we're kind of waiting to see what their final number comes in at, if the estimate has changed at all, and then we may have to seek out adding a little bit to it and see what the townspeople want to do. But we've already in part funded this, so it's possible we won't even need to add to it depending on what information we receive.
And I'm tracking that on the town properties.
Then speed zone solar powered signs. So this is something that one of our selectmen and the police department and highway department, all 3 entities kind of thought that this would be a good investment for the town. Possibly looking at putting one of them off of Ring Road in that speed zone that the selectmen had established a while back, and the other one looking at potentially on Prospect, same thing in that established speed zone. We're working on getting pricing for that. The PPE article, these came in from the fire department, and I have not had a chance to go back to last year's warrant and see how those have kind of changed from last year. But these are sort of, I would say, the standard, the PPE and the SCBA, which is the breathing apparatus. This one is new here, though, the fleet and equipment repair and certifications. And I don't want to get too into this. I'll let the fire chief kind of go through this with you when he attends your next meeting to go through his budget requests. But this would be more meant to kind of create a standing article that they could fund each year at town meeting, and that would handle some of the bigger ticket items. We're still running across large bills for repairs and maintenance to the vehicle fleet that are a result of maintenance and things that should have been done years ago not being done. So now they're becoming more problematic. And then it would also cover, say, for example, the ladders on the trucks. I didn't even realize, but apparently those have to be inspected by the state annually, and they require that they be of a certain year so that they don't get too old. So that's what this purpose would be, but I'll let the chief describe that in a bit more detail next time. The $5,000 is for a grant match for them, a 5% grant match. And again, I'll let him give you the details on that particular grant. This is the $200,000 article for highway for the roadway paving and maintenance. Old Townhouse refurbishment exterior. Well, like I say, I don't need to go through all of these again. These are what John Williamson already went through. It's just kind of putting it into this format so that I hopefully don't forget anything when I put together the first draft of the warrant. And you'll see here, like the consultant article, like John mentioned, replenishing it to get up to the 15 again. We have a few items here that are possibly ARPA. IT equipment and upgrades, I'm still working on that with our IT person to make sure that we're up to date. And then something was mentioned to me about a truck for highway that essentially it would be an F550, so like a dump body, but could handle a full-scale plow. But I have not received anything formal on that yet. So I just put it there as more or less a placeholder. Going to the special town meeting tab. So the roof one we put under both right now because we're waiting to see kind of what we think the bids might do. And we do have a meeting with our consultant on Wednesday, I believe. So we might have a little more information and can kind of, we'll take it off, obviously, one of these. Highway barn roof, John already mentioned that. PPD unanticipated retirement. So these were for a couple different unanticipated retirements, and their salary line at the police department for this current fiscal year has really taken a hit on some of that stuff. So it seems to be, in looking at like what's in the reserve fund and everything, I think that the way to go is most likely going to be an STM article to just address that issue so that they can be made whole again before the end of the fiscal year. But more to come on that, and we can certainly have further discussion on what everybody thinks the best way to address that is. OBRA Social Security shortfall. So this I estimate to be $47.50. So a very long time ago, the town was given an option whether or not to join OBRA, which most municipalities have done. And this is for employees who don't qualify for Plymouth County retirement. You have to do something for them. So it can either be OBRA, which is what a majority of municipalities do, or it can be regular Social Security. We were one of the few municipalities that we were aware of that did Social Security for a number of years, and it was becoming very costly for us and was not as advantageous to the employees. So we've actually switched over to OBRA. As part of that, though, there is a fee for the first 4 years, and our treasurer is estimating that fee at approximately $47.50. So what we're not clear about right now is if we're going to have to pay it for this current fiscal that we're in. If so, then we would put the article on special town meeting for this current fiscal year for the $47.50. And then you'd see it added to their expense budget for the next 3 years, and then it will fall away. If we don't need to pay it for the current year that we're in, then you just see it for 4 years in their expense budget. So that's just there as a placeholder. Unemployment coverage, I will get a more concrete estimate on that, but we do have a couple people that did collect and we're self-insured for that, so we have to come up with that. Retirement board Social Security issue for an employee. This is concerning one particular employee who actually should have been, and I don't want to say too much about this because I want to consult with the treasurer and make sure that my facts are correct, because it was quite some time ago that we spoke about this. But my understanding of it is that many years ago, there was an employee who came on board with the town. They should have been having Plymouth County retirement deducted from their paychecks, but they were never given that option. And we need to rectify that. So that's that number is coming from Plymouth County retirement. And it was basically what would make this employee and the situation whole again. But I will get further clarification on that. And that's just specific to one person. And then the final item here are copier leases. We have leased copy machines in the treasurer collector's office that a majority of the townhouse staff use, the town clerk's office, the Board of Health, and the police department. And the lease agreements are not in and of themselves a bad deal, but for whatever reason, back when they were established, the bank that the leases are with, they continue to charge us monthly fees, month after month. And quite some time ago, Barbara had told us that it wasn't legal for them to charge us this particular type of fee. We just need for these fees to be waived and go away, because I don't think by right we can pay that. And for whatever reason, these people could not figure out their billing system and that we were a municipality. So from the time they would invoice us, they essentially need a very quick turnaround on the invoices, and it does not align with our system of putting something on a warrant, then waiting essentially a week for the check to be generated and mailed out. And it's actually, if we pay them off, then we own the machines outright, and they're all in very good condition. We would own them outright, and they will waive pretty much all of those miscellaneous fees. So it is a good move for us financially in the long term, but it's kind of a large amount, although this is the payoff as of March 31st, and with waiving all the fees. So this number should come down as we get closer to town meeting. So I'll do my best to kind of whittle it down and get it as close to an actual payoff as we can. We should be able to get a payoff, say, for, the end of May. And depending on when we get that quote, that number should come down somewhat. But it does seem like a good deal for the town. We've been playing around with these leases since I've come on board. Some of these were signed by people many years ago, and they don't seem to be serving us well. So we would actually own the machines after this. And then just some standard non-money articles that I don't think you care much about.
Okay. Thank you for that recap. Any questions about any of those items for Liz?
No.
Okay. I apologize. I'm trying to, for whatever reason, I cannot share anything this evening.
Could that have happened when you granted sharing to the rest of us?
No, come on, because I'm still one of you, so I should be able to share, but it's just not working. It's just not. Liz, can you bring up the spreadsheet, the budget spreadsheet that we typically take a look at, and could you share that for us? So we can kind of
Sure.
just take a
One
quick.
second.
Thank you. Okay, so this is our up-to-date budget sheet. And, Liz has been, as the submissions come in from the various departments, Liz has been entering them in for us. So I don't know, if Liz, if there's anything you want to cover from the last time we.
So I reduced the amount on the group health line. Originally, we put in the request at about a 10% projected increase. And now we're in discussions with them, but it's looking closer to a 6% increase. And that would be due to like COVID claims and things like that. So I reduced the number so far, and it's possible it will go a little lower than this. So that's lower than what we initially put in for. We're still waiting on the final number for county pension. Insurance premiums look to be pretty steady. I see no problem with level funding those from this current fiscal. Some of these we already went through. And then a few are still kind of a work in progress. The town council line, this one, we have to figure out what we want to do with this. For this current fiscal year, we're projecting a shortfall. We had gone down for this current fiscal year by $10,000. I think maybe being a little overly optimistic. But where we stand now, I want to say at last check, there was about 8,000 or 9,000-ish left in that budget line. And I do not anticipate that being enough to get us through the remainder of the fiscal year. So I'm thinking for next year, it would make sense to go back up to the 60,000 that we had customarily done for several years. But obviously, if you have a different opinion about that, I'm certainly open to comments or suggestions.
We right now are at 83% on the legal line, and there is just over $8,000 left.
Yeah, so I don't anticipate the 8,300 to be enough to, to get us through. Utilities we're still looking at. We've been able to bundle some things together. I'm trying to get more of a concrete number for that line. So we're putting some things together for that. The bundling and moving over to the fiber and the voice over IP phone will save us a little bit of money. But unfortunately, it appears that our heating bills have been sky high. Same thing for the electric bills. Our last heating bill for the townhouse, and forgive me, I don't have the number right in front of me, but it was very high. And we did have a discussion about it even at our last selectmen's meeting. Everything's going up. The rates are just higher. At the townhouse, for example, everybody, it's climate controlled. So the heat is not running when people are not in the building. In fact, if somebody's there on off hours, they have to deliberately turn up the heat. And it's computerized. It was one of the things that we were able to do under a Green Communities grant. So it can't be set over a certain temperature. It will still return to an out of the office setting after a certain amount of time. I do know that the old entrance, like at what is the historic front of the building, that was incredibly drafty, to a point that Steve Sorrow had to put plastic up and everything. It felt like almost like wind blowing through that hallway. So I don't think that some of those issues have done us any favors as far as energy conservation. But as far as the thermostats and user error, we do manage pretty well for that. So some of it kind of is what it is as far as the cost for that. So we're working on that. And I think some of it's not quite ready for prime time. I'll have more for this at the next one. I think we talked about this last time. Animal inspector, the reason for the big increase is because of Mass Department of Agricultural Resources. They have certain mandates for hours and reporting. They take that position very seriously. And with the number of barn inspections that we have in town, that was the number that we landed at after conferring with our animal inspector and with the representative from MDR. So I feel confident with that number. However, when you look at that number combined with animal control, it is still a savings versus what we were doing a few years ago when we were paying a standalone animal control officer. Now we have the agreement with Carver. We were able to reduce that by a little bit and eliminate the animal control expenses. So it's still a savings for the town, but obviously that is kind of a big increase. And then the tree warden, I know we talked about that at the last one. I remember reading to you from his message to me why the big increase in his expense line, and it had to do with how many hours for having a tree crew out during a storm, and he wanted enough money to have, I believe, 3 days of a tree crew out there as opposed to what was normally budgeted for, which was 1 day or 8 hours of that level of support. Fires coming in next time. Oh, emergency dispatch services. So I did send something out to everyone. We are having representatives from the ROC, which is Regional Old County Communication Center. They are participating in a Board of Selectmen's meeting next Monday, March 14th. And that meeting will be posted. And I believe I already sent you the Zoom information, but I will resend it closer to Monday so that you have it. And I had been compiling information from the other communities, and it looks like they're attempting to kind of level fund everybody, which does not align with what we were told that it would be based on call volume. So I do feel like they have a little bit of explaining to do. So I hope that people are available to participate or call in and listen on March 14th. I'm sure that they'll be prepared for questions, but they will be participating in that to talk us through it and to field our questions. So there's that. And then, you know, we're doing the schools at on the 21st as well.
Great. Thank you very much for the recap. Lisa, do you have anything from the accountant standpoint to share with the group? I know you, thank you for the input on the legal. So the legal, you mentioned we were at 82% or whatever of the legal. So
Yes.
is that through the end of February? Or is that through January?
That is through the end of February.
Okay, so that's 2/3 of the way. So it's 82% spending on 67% of the year, roughly?
Right.
Okay, all right, good, thank you. Any other items to share?
There are a few departments that have numbers that are a little bit high. The assessors expense budget, and I will talk to the departments about these. I actually was looking through and highlighting. This is the report that I send to you guys. It
Yep.
has everything out, and I went through and highlighted everything that was over the 67%. Their department head wages and their expense budget. Expense budget's at 82. Department head's just at 68.79, but that's a little bit high. And I'm going to not talk about the articles because I need to talk to them. Legal,
Sure.
we talked about. Conservation's a little bit high, but they probably things that come up earlier in the year that don't have to get paid all year. Police salaries, they're not too high, but they're at 68.63%. And like we said, 67 is about where they should be.
Sure.
So it's not too bad. Same thing, fire equipment is at 68%. The SCBA bottles, and this is an article, is overspent, but they have a second article that's SCBA radios. I need to talk to them, see if we can move some money from one to the other and get those zeroed out. I'm sure that that's what's going to happen there. Fire department EMS salaries is at 74%, and so is their expense budget, kind of high. Let me just quickly see if I had any others that I had marked here. No, I don't need to talk about it. That should be okay. Open space is really high, but I think that they probably have just know that they've spent the budget that they had. Miscellaneous, same thing. Rec is really high, but I think they probably just spent what they have and they know what follow that. Unemployment insurance, like Liz said, that'll have to be a special town meeting. Right now, we're about $5,000 over in that account. We'll see where that ends up. And I think that's about it. So they really, fire is a little bit concerning, their numbers being as high as they are. But that's about where we stand right now.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm sure fire will come up for discussion in 2 weeks when we meet with them.
Right.
Thank you for that update. So I believe that is all we had on the agenda for this evening. Are there any items not on the agenda that anyone would care to discuss? Okay, hearing none, then I'll remind everyone about the Board of Selectmen meeting next week for the meeting with the Communication Center. As Liz said, if you recall last year when we went through this process with them, they were basing it somewhat upon call volume because we were questioning the call volume that they had assigned to Plympton. And we were saying it was certainly out of line for the population compared to some of the other communities. So now all of a sudden for them to change course apparently is interesting to say the least. So reminder to that, if you can join next week, that would be helpful. Our next meeting is 2 weeks from tonight, where we will have a jam-packed meeting to discuss schools and fire and a few other things. So if there's no other items for this evening, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Roll call vote. Marilyn Brown,
Aye.
Steve Lewis,
Aye.
Mike Lemieux,
Aye.
Catherine Shepard,
Aye.
Nathaniel Sides. Aye. Thank you all. We are adjourned 7:09 p.m. Thank you all for attending.